What if a sacrifice could defy the heavens themselves, an act so bold that the blood-spilled echoes in silence to this day? Imagine a man facing God with stained hands, a disobedience the church would rather forget. This is not the story you heard in sermons. It is the uncensored truth about a sacrifice that shook the divine. If you have the courage to face the forbiddens, stay with me, because what I am about to reveal could change everything you believe. Close your eyes and let me take you to a barren desert, where the air carries the metallic smell of blood and the distant sound of a stifled scream. This is the story of Cain, a man whose sacrifice defied the heavens, a secret I carry like a weight, whispering it to you now. It all begins in a field bathed in the merciless sun, where Cain worked the land, his calloused hands digging the hoe into the dry soil, sweat dripping as he reaped the fruits of his labor. I see him there, a simple man, but with a restless heart, torn between duty and a pride that grew like a weed. His brother, Abel, herded flocks in the hills, his life marked by the scent of wool and the bleating of sheep, an existence that seemed to touch the heavens with ease. Both brought offerings to God, but while Abel offered the firstborn of his flock, Cain gave the grain of his harvest, a gesture he felt was enough. Yet something was wrong. The air grew heavy, silence fell like a shadow, and God looked upon Abel with favor, but turned his face away from Cain, leaving him with a rage that burned like fire. Rejection consumed him, a poison seeping into his veins as he watched Abel, his favored brother, walking with divine blessing. I can feel the heat of his rapid breathing, the clenching of his fists, the desire to prove his worth even if it meant breaking the rules. One night, under a starry sky that seemed to mock him, Cain called Abel to the field, his voice thick with false calm. What happened next was a rupture. With trembling hands, he grabbed a stone, Abel's blood staining the dry earth as human sacrifice replaced the vegetable, an act of disobedience that defied God's will. I shudder to remember the sound of the blow, the silence that followed, the guilt that coiled in his chest like a chain. God heard the cry of the earth, Abel's blood crying out for justice, and confronted Cain with a question that echoes to this day. Where is your brother? I can hear the divine voice cutting through the air, the terror in Cain's eyes as he lied. I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? But heaven was not silent. A curse fell upon him, condemning him to wander as a fugitive, marked by a mark that protected but also isolated him. Scripture records this in Genesis 4:10-11. The Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. Now you will be cursed from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." This verse is a window into a sacrifice that defied heaven, a truth the church avoids exploring. The weight of guilt followed him like a shadow as Cain wandered through strange lands, Abel's blood still warm in his memory. I can feel the heat of the sun beating down on his skin, the emptiness of his soul as he built a city called Enoch, a refuge to hide his pain. But the desert held secrets. The winds whispered of a people who saw Cain as a pioneer, a man who defied God and survived, a legend who grew despite the curse. He bore the mark, a mark that made him untouchable, but also a constant reminder of his disobedience, an internal conflict that consumed him silently. Years later, a vision haunted Cain's descendants, an echo of the sacrifice that changed everything. I can imagine a young man, Lamech, sitting around a campfire, listening to the elders tell how Abel's blood brought a lesson, that defiance of the heavens does not end in victory, but in a legacy of struggle. The flame danced as they spoke, the smell of burning wood mingling with the weight of their words, a story that challenged the narrative of blind obedience. Time transformed the curse into a lesson, a warning passed down from generation to generation among the nomads. I can hear the wind singing in the tents, the voices of the storytellers echoing that Cain's sacrifice was a cry for freedom, but also a warning that blood spilled exacts a price. The earth absorbed the blood, but it also planted a seed of reflection, a duality that the faithful tried to erase. The mark of Cain began to inspire debate among travelers, a controversy that divided opinion. I can feel the heat of discussions around campfires, the sound of raised voices as some saw him as a courageous rebel, others as an example of perdition. This tension fueled a search for meaning, a mystery that spread like smoke in the air. As the years passed, Cain's story reached the scribes, who recorded it with awe and fascination. I can imagine an ancient scribe, his trembling hands tracing symbols on parchment, capturing the duality of sacrifice, an act of blood that challenged but also taught. His writing suggested a possible redemption, an idea that tradition rejected, but still whispers in the margins of history. The legend of Cain evolved into a mirror for future generations, an invitation to reflect on the limits of obedience. I can feel the silence of the nights under the stars, the weight of each soul who heard his story and wondered about their own choices, a legacy that endures beyond the bloodshed. And so, the secret of the sacrifice that defied the heavens is revealed, a story of blood and disobedience. A man who faced God and bore the eternal weight. Was Cain cursed or blessed? His act a rebellion or a calling? I leave this question hanging, a mirror for you to look within yourself. What would you do in the face of divine rejection? This uncensored truth isn't just past. It's a pulse in our veins, a reminder that every choice has an echo. The blood of Abel, the mark of Cain, they still speak to us. Do you believe this really happened? Have you ever faced a moment that tested your faith? If this touched your heart, it's because this video needed to reach you. If you feel like it, perhaps leave a like, and if you feel comfortable, a subscription might be a kind step toward following us. But only if you're happy.